Okay. There we go. All right. I think that we are streaming here, kids. Let's do this. Let's talk about some Saturn. I'm pretty excited. I actually have a little bit of a new setup in my space here as well. I'm getting a new office space, so this is a little bit crazy. I'm gonna turn us a little bit because I'm looking at you guys on two separate screens here, which is a trip. I'm hoping everybody is able to see me. I'm gonna wait just a few minutes to let people get in. Okay. Welcome. Here we go. Hi, everybody. Yay. I feel a little bit more confident with my a little bit more confident with my interface. I've been learning a lot here lately about how to use my different interfaces, and I'm excited for you guys to see the November videos and going forward because I've got some new elements to bring, and I got a new camera that I actually know how to work. So let's raise some roofage on that. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty pumped about that business. This is so weird. I think I have to put us back over here because looking at you guys on both sides is too much. It's too much. How's everybody doing? Thank you. Thank you. I feel good. I've been, so one of you, Queen Bee, you are cracking me up. I'm finally watching. Well, I hope so. I hope you're watching. I hope we're getting it done today. But yeah, I've been weightlifting and probably not eating better because I'm still very Taurus. I actually just had popcorn before this, but I'm weightlifting and I'm good. I feel good. I feel like things are going well here. Let me just tell you guys, I put an offer out there and I'll talk about it in a minute. But I want to just tell you guys too, as far as, you know, energies and learning and things like that get activated in our charts. Man, oh man, did Jupiter get activated in my chart just about a month ago when I did the live video for the Jupiter transiting Scorpio videos, and I did the Jupiter 10. Hi from the Netherlands. Oh my gosh, you guys, I got to learn so much and I got to take on a lot of integrity because I put that offer out there for the Jupiter 10, and I was thinking, you know, maybe 10, 15 people or something would want to take advantage of it because I've really kind of had some, I think some organizational blinders on, and I forget that Stormy Grace is still growing. You know what I mean? That I'm growing, things are moving on. So anyway, I put that video out there and oh my gosh, I had so many orders. My orders hit 297 orders. So I was blown away, blown away, blown away. Okay, so I got to learn real fast about how to, one, work real fast, two, about how to do these, and I called my, you know, my spiritual friend crying, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So it was such a good learning lesson. So if you did a Jupiter 10, I hope you loved it in the end product. But I am smarter this time in my live giveaways, and I feel like it makes a lot more sense. So, and man, I had some things fall through the cracks over this last couple weeks because I was so big, so busy, and Jupiter just was so expansive. It was almost as if I was putting out something and promising something more than what I could deliver based on quantity, and Jupiter works like that. So hopefully you're having a good Jupiter and Scorpio experience. It was definitely one I needed to learn, and I'm pretty grateful for it. So, but now, hi from North Carolina and Russia. Yay! So today, we're going to talk about Saturn. Saturn's getting ready to get on the move. I don't think that Saturn moves like that. In fact, if you study anything about astronomy, you know that Saturn does not do this. Hello, Anna Marie from London, UK. Saturn is going to get on the move. Now, Saturn is our planet of structure, right? That's what Saturn does, is it's structure, it's organization. It's considered in astrology to be the I have popcorn. It's considered to be the taskmaster, right? Because Saturn comes and he wants, the effect that Saturn wants to have is that he wants to bring us spiritually to another level of maturity, right? Like Saturn doesn't want temporary results. He doesn't want temporary things. He wants us to be solid. He wants this to stick. We can build foundation off of what Saturn's got going on, right? So it's about, some people will teach that it's about just crystallizing some lessons, grounding you down, those kinds of things. And yeah, I definitely talk about those. But for me, Saturn is about spiritual maturity. Because when it comes from this inside out kind of place, right? When it comes from this place where my consciousness is widened, I realize that my actions have implications on other people. When I realize that my actions have spiritual consequence to me, that's how I come to this kind of spiritual awakening. Hi, guys. And I become ready to change and mature. And from that place of spiritual maturity, it can be a lot more permanent, right? Than if I just stop doing a behavior, right? If I just stop doing a behavior, I'm probably going to stop doing it temporarily. And then I'm going to get back on that behavior bus, whatever it is. So really, it's kind of cool when we talk about it because I really love the mythology. I love all of that kind of stuff. I'm really into it. And when we talk about Saturn, Saturn is considered Kronos, right? Our timekeeper, our taskmaster. And what did Kronos do? If you know anything about mythology, Kronos not only was this like big, scary timekeeper who never could actually kill anybody, right? But he could definitely swallow it up. And that's what he did. He ate children, right? So Kronos would eat our youth. He would eat the young. And that is really what Saturn kind of comes to do, is he takes that immaturity off the table for us. But here's the deal. I don't teach fear-based astrology. I don't even agree with fear-based astrology, but I do believe in honest astrology. So I am not here to tell you today or at any time you listen to any of my work, you guys, that Saturn is a planet or a transit or a time or a cycle you should be fearing. This is a time to, with open arms, open heart, be as willing as you can to participate. Because the deal is, every single one of these planets is working towards your greatest good. All of them. All of them. This is a setup to cosmically have you on fleek and be a beautiful guide for your lifetime. But the fact is that we're human and we have to learn. And sometimes that learning is relatively painful, right? Because we don't want to let go of these behaviors, right? But what Saturn helps us do is the minute he makes this move into a new sign is he shows us everything that's not working, right? He's like, that behavior, that's not working. That structure around your money, that's not working. These ideas, they need to be solidified, right? This relationship, it needs to be solidified. This whatever, it needs to be solidified, right? And he does this by not only moving into the sign, but also moving into some aspects with other things in your chart. So today what we're actually going to talk about during this section is we're going to talk about transiting Saturn. So this is the moving Saturn, the ones that's still moving, in the sign of Capricorn, through the different houses. Today we're going to talk about houses only. Now I'll tell you, all week long I've got a Saturn situation going on, right? So every day for the rest of the week there is a scheduled live chat where we are going to talk about these different aspects of transiting Saturn and Capricorn. So if you don't get a question answered today about the houses, don't worry. I'll be talking about Capricorn as a general horoscope through the signs tomorrow. Then I'll be talking about Capricorn if it's your Saturn return. We're going to talk about that because that's a significant, special, beautiful time, okay? So we're going to talk about a fair amount of things. So don't worry, you're not going to miss out. I'm going to do my best to have you covered, okay? All right. Hi, everybody. I didn't say hi to yet. Oh, and there's Josh. Say hi to Josh, everyone. That's my Aries. So anyway, okay. Let's kick that knowledge. That's right, Scorpio Queen. Now, just some generals really quickly about Saturn. Saturn has a movement where it comes back around to each sign about every 28 to 29 years. Now, if you use or you are studying with someone or whatever it is, someone who has or someone who uses equal house method, you're going to see that there's about a 2.5 year change in between what you're going to see in the chart, and that's okay. Cool. No big deal, right? Just understand that different systems are going to show you different things, okay? And if you're using Vedic astrology, you're going to see something completely different, which is fine. What we're going to talk about today is information coming from Western astrology, tropical Placidus method, okay? This is what we're using over here in Graceland. That is so good. Thank you, Elvis, for that, by the way. All right, shall we talk about it? I want to talk about one other concept really quickly too before we get going. So transiting Saturn, right? Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, right? So what you're also going to want to be aware of while we're talking about this is grab your charts, okay? Or go pull it up. You can go to stormygrace.com. You can go to Cafe Astrology. You can go to AstroGent, I think is what it's called. You have a lot of places where you can pull a free chart if you need to just see your wheel. Or you can order one from me for sure. I'll put a link for that in just a minute. But what you want to do also is grab your chart, okay, for 2 reasons. One, Saturn in Capricorn, that's fine. We're all going to get a little bit of love there, right? But the transiting and moving Saturn is not the only Saturn we need to consider. We have to consider where it's at in your personal chart, right? We also have to consider what impact it's trying to shape around the house that it is in your chart. And the only way you will know what it is for you is to have your chart or to have your wheel somewhere handy. So transiting Saturn through Capricorn, if you have a Capricorn rising, that's where Capricorn's at in your chart. So you're going to need to listen for what that's about. You're going to need to listen for what the first house is about, right? Now, let's just say that you've got Capricorn all the way over in the 9th house. We need to listen for that as well, because Saturn is not only working on coming by and having its function to make you more aware and bring you to this next level just because it's transiting. It's doing it in your chart as well. So you need to be mindful of that nature. I just want to throw you this example really quickly. So for me, I actually have, no, I don't want to use mine. Mine's a weird one. We'll use a client of mine. So she has Capricorn in her 2nd house, right? So her 2nd house concerns, issues, ideas are going to travel along with the energy of this transiting Saturn, right? So they travel side by side. So she's going to work on things that finance, value, all of that good stuff, right? Now, let's just say somebody had Capricorn in the 9th house. The 9th house concerns are also going to travel with this as well. So things like that, okay? Any questions there so far? Oh, my light just went down. I just had a light quit, you guys. How does that happen? That thing needs some Saturn. It needs some structure. Just kidding. All right, I'm just giving you guys a second to say hello. Put up any questions if you have them before I launch off here talking about Saturn through these. Oh, thanks. Yeah, this is a cute little piece I whipped up. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, we're looking good here. Let's start talking about this. Okay, transiting Saturn in Capricorn in the 1st house. So what we see here is when Saturn is in conjunction to the ascendant, or it's moving through this 1st house, it is moving through the 1st house, which in and of and on its own is a fire house. Okay, so keep this in mind. In general, when we have Saturn moving through any of the fire houses, which are the 1st, the 5th, and the 9th houses, right? You're going to deal with issues of growing in self-confidence. You're going to deal with issues of you're going to deal with ideas of how these issues have affected your life, how they've affected your productivity, right? When Saturn is moving through the earth houses, which are the 2nd, the 6th, and the 10th, we're going to deal and confront issues of self-worth, right? Of effectiveness, of value. When Saturn is moving through the air houses, 3rd, 7th, 9th, and 11th, there we go, we're going to evaluate relationships, right? We're going to evaluate relationships with ourselves, with others and how much you depend on those relationships, right? As well, air is very mental, so your mental outlook on things really gets popped in there as well. Now, when we have Saturn moving through one of the water houses, and keep in mind, guys, I keep saying house, house, house. Even if you have Capricorn in your first house, it's got an earth energy, but it is naturally ruled by fire. So keep in mind, there's layer after layer in astrology, okay? So, but Saturn moving through the water houses, 4th, 8th, and 12th houses, we're going to evaluate your inner resources, your faith, your connection to something divine, your psychological workings, all of those things, your spiritual fitness, okay? All of those things are going to be things that come into play. So keep in mind, you want to grab your charts right now, find where Capricorn is at for you, and then wait to listen for your house, okay? All right. I just want to make sure I'm answering the questions I see. Is the Saturn return a good thing or a bad thing? It is a perfect thing, is what I'll tell you. There's the sweet and the sour with both of it. Without having a Saturn return, you don't mature, right? You don't come to that next level. You do not need to be 40 acting like you're 15, right? Like, we don't need that. We need to come up. The whole deal here is spiritual evolution. So it is the sweet and the sour. It's necessary, but it's perfect. It's perfect. And here's the thing. You do not have to suffer through a Saturn return, right? What if Capricorn is on the line between two houses? Does that mean you're reading it wrong? Absolutely not. That is how most charts are. What you're going to do is you need to listen for the two houses that it may be touching, right? Because you're going to experience a little bit of both. So if you have Saturn, if you have Capricorn, on a cusp or in a split in some way, shape, or form, you just need to be listening for both sections, okay? So listen for both houses. And yes, it can be a lot. The Saturn return can be a lot, but we'll cover that on Thursday. Okay, so we were talking about this first house. Back to that. House number 1, when you're looking at your chart, is the one immediately to the left, right? You're going to look to the left, and it should be, like you see the cross like this, it's this one right here. This is the first house, okay? And then we're going to go down around. So we're going to move through the northern hemisphere, up through the southern hemisphere. And if you didn't know that in astrology, the southern hemisphere is at the top and the northern is at the bottom, west to the right, east to the left, right? It is not like it is when you look at a compass. Okay. Let's go. Let's get back to house number 1. Okay, so you got transiting Saturn going through your first house because that's where Capricorn's at. You're concerning yourself with how you are coming across to people, right? How are people receiving you? Because that first house, that's the ascendant. This is our representative. This is the mask. People meet this person way before they meet the ushy-gushy core of who we are. So this is your body. This is how you represent yourself. This is the first impression you give to people. It is a wonderful time when Saturn is coming to bring structure, organization, maturity to this area for you, to have a new diet, to have new exercise, to have a new regard for your body. Your outlook on life may change. You may become more serious. Saturn is a serious energy, right? Is a heavier energy. So you may be going, okay, now wait a minute. I don't like that when I walk into a room, people don't want to approach me, or I don't like that people think I just have resting bitch face all the time, right? You may be starting to look at some things and going, all right, how is even my body language my representation? It's always too about, are you representing yourself as dependable, as responsible, right? Your self-confidence here is something that you're going to be working on. Are you superficial? Right? When people meet you, is it just a very superficial conversation? Because Saturn will have none of that. Those abilities to have delusions around the way that you represent yourself in public, the delusions that you have around your body, right? Where it's like, here's my favorite one when Saturn comes to someone's first house is, I'm just big boned. No, Saturn will not accept that unless you are actually just big boned. It will be really tearing down some delusions that you have around your physical space and your representation. Now, one of the things that I think is also important to understand is that at the end of this, here's the deal. You cannot give birth to a new life without some labor, right? Because at the end, what you have is you have a newfound respect for yourself. You have a newfound self-confidence. You have a newfound realistic understanding of yourself, of people, in terms of career and projects and things like that. If you are trying to launch something out, right? You're wanting to put a book out. You're wanting to really get that title page correct. You're wanting to get that cover right. This is a wonderful time to put structure around beginning something new. So in terms of career and projects, one of the things you can see is that at the beginning, the outward signs of really good progress on a project may not seem like it's there, but it will be by the end, okay? What you do during your Saturn transiting time as well, you'll also see the effects after. You get really good blessings afterwards. Like, for example, if you start a project or a hobby or something like that during a Saturn transit in your first house, and it's like, this is taking up a lot of my time, it's taking up a lot of my energy, but you actually enjoy it, there would be like no immediate financial gain, but then you watch. We get to the other side of this, and it's like, oh, I can make money with this. Right? Like really interesting stuff like that. So kind of keep that in mind. The other thing I want to tell you about Saturn in any of the houses is that if you've already been working on your maturity a little bit in a different house, in one of these houses, Saturn's going to help you see the benefits more quickly. If you have been being immature, if you have been being delusional or irresponsible, Saturn has to show you what doesn't work so that it can show you what will. It brings you spiritually along to see what the next change needs to look like. Okay, Saturn in the second house. Remember, now we're in an earth house, okay? So this is a certain level of introspection comes when you get into an earth house, right? Because we're starting to evaluate worth. What's your self-worth? What are your ideas of worth and value and money, right? Your possessions. What do you think about your possessions? So when Saturn makes this move over here, let me move us, guys, sorry. When Saturn makes this move here, it's a new stage of really taking stock of your worth, your effectiveness out in the world, your finances. Finances, if you have been irresponsible with finances, if you've got stuff that needs to be worked on, if you've not been living with a budget, right? Saturn's going to come in here and be like, whoop, we need to know where your money has been going. So this is a stage of life for you, also marked with hard work, because how do you develop self-worth and self-esteem? You do esteemable things, right? You go out and you show yourself your worth. It's not based on what other people think. It's you watch yourself do, create, come through something else, right? So this is all of that's going to be, and that's also how you make money. You got to work, right? In some way, shape, or form, you got to work if you're going to make money, unless you've just got it like that. At which point, call me, you know. Now, here's the thing with Saturn here in the second house. Your financial success may not be so entirely remarkable, right? It may not be, but it does get to be steady. This is an earth house, okay? It's going to be steady, but it may be steady but slow, but it will be steady likely. Now, the other thing that it has been associated with is financial loss. Really, it's totally associated with financial loss. But here's the thing. I think that is more about perception than actual financial loss, right? Like, because you could have money going out, right? And it's like, wait a minute, this is not good. But the truth is that if you review what your money is doing, if you review the money you have, you should be able to be looking at a budget, looking at something, seeing where your money is going, how you're spending it, all of this good kind of stuff, so you can create a new kind of tracking around that, right? And it's almost like you have to be more effective and bring your you have to level up in your finances. You have to bring them more into an honest understanding, right? Because it's almost like in every single one of these houses with Saturn, the truth sets you free. And if the truth is that your money is a mess, right now, or your money is just, you're not really crystal clear on your money or your value, because the way you feel about yourself will make you spend or not spend money for sure. Saturn's got to come and bring you, level you up and bring you to the truth so that you have a solid foundation to work on, okay? I will tell you, in the second house is where I see people more often than not be really dissatisfied with the progress they're making. They feel like it's slow. When is this ever going to be over? Is it always going to be like this? And what I can tell you with Saturn, you cannot rush your Saturn transit. Okay, you're not going to be able to rush it. It's in an earth sign. You're not going to be able to rush it. How can you slow down and take advantage of what's being shown to you? How can you learn more? Bring in a teacher to teach you. Learn a new skill. Because the more quickly you're willing to get on board with what Saturn's teaching you, the more likely he is to be helpful to you. Okay, as opposed to feel so heavy. Now, the other purpose of this transit is for you to make that connection between your own feelings and what you produce or what you get in this world. If you have products and you're not charging enough for them, Saturn's going to come around and go, why are you doing that? Do you not believe in the service that you give out, right? Like, what are you doing? Let's up those, right? Other things that can happen is that you're like, why do I do all of this work? Why am I doing all of this work? I'm not getting anything out of it. But you develop such internal strength, especially here in the second house, that in the end result is that you come out, you have a different effectiveness, you have a different understanding of your value, you have all of those things. The challenge here is just to capture this new definition and this new self-confidence as a way to define yourself differently than you've been living or experiencing, okay? Yep, that's right. When Saturn comes, you do not have a choice. Like, you're going to confront whatever Saturn is bringing to the table because it's what it's time for you. Now let's talk about this third house place. Oh, let me answer this question. Yep, that's exactly right, Sarah. Depending on what you've already been doing with your second house, Saturn, if you've already been trying to be responsible, create that budget, do that debt management, Saturn will be more helpful because it's almost as if you're already in the flow of it. If you've not been, it's not that Saturn makes you poor. None of our planets make us anything. Right? Our planets don't make us anything. It's our behaviors that make us. So it may also be a time too with people experiencing maybe stuff in the second house or Saturn in the second house for you to really look at that responsibility, right? Is this still the blame game? Is your money somebody else's problem? Or is your money a reflection of what you are or are not doing in your world, right? And sometimes that just means like you don't know what to do and you got to get a new teacher. So Saturn's not going to make you poor, but your behaviors may. So keep that in mind. And Saturn's also not going to make you rich, but your behaviors may be. So keep that in mind, right? Okay. All right. Absolutely. You are not successful unless you learn these Saturn lessons. You're not. But let's move to the third house. We got to push on. We've got some more signs to do, or some more houses, excuse me. Okay, so Saturn going into the third house. Of them all, I feel like this is a really good one. Okay, now it's coming into here an air house. So it marks the time where maybe you have networked with people around you, right? Maybe you've been gaining information in some way. Maybe you've been studying something or you've been putting something out there. Whatever it is, the people, the communications you've been having, including with siblings and cousins, study information that you've been sharing in some way, shape, or form. It's really your whole communication is going to come under investigation. Now, this can include neighbors as well. I just want to put that out there. Okay. If you've listed a house, if you're trying to sell a car, if you're wanting to buy those things come under investigation at this time as well by Saturn, because Saturn wants to make sure it's solid, right? He wants solid gold here. So a different kind of pressure, I think, is produced in the third house when Saturn's there. It's not about your personality or your resources like it is in the first and the second house. What this comes to be about is that the pressures are about mental input and output, right? What's the conversation in your head right now? Do you have positive self-talk up here, right? Do you have good conversation with people outside of you as you're putting information out in the world? You know what I mean? Is it solid? Do you know what I'm saying? Like Saturn really comes and puts you in a position to creatively to put some pressure on you to say, hey, actually, I don't feel like that's the right explanation. You may feel pressure to produce ideas, to produce, to maybe even produce a project or to produce something, and then you feel like you have to make it work. You know what I mean? Like in your head, the conversation gets so spun up and you feel this pressure to like make it work, do it. And that's not necessarily what this is about, okay? I think that this is the one placement where you can be very worried because it's a mental house, right? So you can be like, oh, okay, all right. Like your character is going to change at this time because you could be more worrisome. There could even be, you're really going to see what your thinking process is like when you're under pressure. You really will, because it will show you how quickly you run to depression, how quickly you run to somber thinking, how quickly you get melancholy, how quickly in this house self-pity comes up. Okay? Like it comes up because self-pity just means I can't make it be a different way. So if I can't do it, I'm going to feel bad about it. Right? And that's the mental process. And the self-pity bar is always open. They just like love to have people come in there and drink some fear and sit down and be in self-pity all day. So you're learning all over again with this third house here. Now, it may seem sometimes too, I think, because of the networking aspect that like siblings or acquaintances that you have, not friends, acquaintances, networks, they may seem like they're blocking you growing. You could have some strained relationships here. You could even have strained relationships in the sense that you're like, I don't even know if I want to keep this website provider. You know what I mean? Like it could be like that. But it's all going to be about the pressure to restructure your time and your effort in how you're communicating in some way, shape, or form. You can definitely, with Saturn here, feel overwhelmed with communication devices, emails, messages, maybe recordings, things like that. These day-to-day things could feel like there's disruptions in your day all day long. So you could really have stuff like that going on. And this includes disruptions in your thinking, okay? Now, as Saturn moves closer to that IC for you, which is that cusp of the fourth house, there could be some more feelings of worry as you feel like, I think you feel like, oh my God, life is closing in, like I'm getting to the end, there's not enough time. Those are the things that could be happening mentally for you. But the thing is by the end of the transit, I think you just have a greater depth of knowledge and understanding about the communication that's happening up here, communication that's happening out here, being crystal clear about information that you're sharing and feeling more effective. Because that's the thing. Saturn wants to leave us effective so that we can achieve. You know what I'm saying? So, voila. There's that in the third house. Okay, 2 seconds, guys. I got to open the door so the dogs don't start barking at the mail guy. Okay, I'm back. All right, let's talk about, hello everyone I haven't said hi to. Let's talk about Saturn transiting through this fourth house space for you. And remember, you could have Capricorn sitting between two houses. So if you do, make sure you're listening for both of your houses, okay? So transiting Saturn in the fourth house, now we've moved into a water energy, right? So we're now in a water house. So this is a time, Saturn transiting this fourth house, yes, it could mean a move. It could mean any of those things. It could just mean a restructuring of your home life, right? In some way, shape, or form, which it's a reworking. You're going to rework this area of your life. You're going to restructure this area of your life. Now, in terms of like an outward sign of achievement, this is probably the most unremarkable, I think, of all of the houses to transit. Really, truly, because in this outward sign, you don't always see it. People think that just because Saturn's transiting the fourth house that you're going to go get a new house. Not always. You could just be fixing home and family relationships right where you're at, so there's no real outward representation of it. Not only that, at a deeper level, and the one I really like to teach on, the fourth house is about your internal foundations for your life. We have foundations and ideas and beliefs and things like that we were given as children, when we grew up and we became teenagers, now as adults, and especially if you've been adulting for a while. We have these foundational ideas, beliefs, philosophies, blah, 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 that we've built our lives on. And now you got to get a new foundation. And over the last 5 years, that new foundation has been being built. There's some ideas that don't work anymore. There's some beliefs you have that you're like, that's not my belief. There's also been some situations you've likely been put in that make you understand you've got to come up. You've got to come to another place or you're going to be stuck, right? So this is also a time of restructuring and reworking this foundational level of yourself. I will tell you, if you struggle with relationships with women, Saturn is going to bring women and ideas around women into your life like crazy. Whether you're a man or you're a woman who struggles with that, you're going to do some work with that. Now, okay, near the end of this transit, and certainly not any time before that, I think you're going to recognize, even though there's no real outward thing here, how much some life-changing decisions that you've made in this area are for you. And it is about that internal advancement. It really is. You're not going to be complete. You cannot move on without moving right here. Hi, everybody. One of the things that I think is important during this stage is that you are also working on, because you're doing this inner working. Sorry, I'm listening. I'm getting some info. So is your identity, right? Like your identity is going to get different. You may even be exploring your roots. This is the year where you buy everybody in the family the ancestry DNA test, and you're studying your roots. You're pulling things together. There's things from the past that will certainly be coming up, where you came from. So that when Saturn begins its transit, though, through the fifth house, right? When it's getting ready to move to your fifth house, you'll be ready to differentiate yourself from other people, right? Because before you were kind of handed these ideas, this very cookie cutter kind of life and ideas. And now it's going to be time as Saturn gets ready to transit this fifth house for you to express and be on your own and express your own ideas and things like that. So, I don't know. When I also think about the reorganization in your house, for some of you, I just keep seeing that you're going to move the damn couch. Like, it's time to move the couch. It's time to do a very big personal house cleaning, right? What's in your house? What's in your space that's no longer serving you? You cannot welcome in new gifts if you won't let go of the old ones. And somebody else is looking for your treasure that's not serving you anymore because it's exactly the right thing that they need at that time. So really energetically doing spring cleaning of your own personal house and also of your internal self, because you've got some stuff that's stuck and those things will rise to the surface. And I highly suggest, if you don't do the personal house cleaning with me, if you don't go through one of those sessions, do it with somebody, right? But do it with somebody who's not going to just continue to ask you how you feel, right? The fourth house is a feeling house, and unfortunately, in human terms, talking about how I feel is not always the right way to get to the root of the problem. So make sure you're working with somebody who leads you from feeling to fact, right? Because from fact, then you can appropriately address your intuition and see what's what, right? Feelings are shady. They just change. Like, they just change so fast that you can't really trust a feeling, but you can trust your intuition if you're able to hear it, all right? All right, somewhere down the road during this transit in the fourth house, if you felt unsupported in any way, shape, or form, or alone, you will address that, and you will also get to watch yourself come to a different place where you don't feel that way anymore. So don't be surprised if there's some delays and some slowdowns that are experienced also in health for you. Okay, just because you're resetting your own foundation, and Rome wasn't built in a day, so you're not going to build a new internal you. You're not going to do it in a day. So you may be tired. You may be a little bit more sleepy. But I think that as Saturn gets ready to move towards this fifth house for you, like I said, you're going to feel a sense of mastery over this area of your life and watch these relationships change. Watch these relationships change. Now, by the end of this transit, I do think if you were going to move, that's the time that you might be able to do something like that. All right, we've spoken a little bit about the Saturn transiting through the fourth, so let's just go on over to the fifth. Let's see, do we have some questions so far? Oh, thank you so much, Jerry. That's very cool. Thank you for the compliments for sure. And yep, I am a Taurus. So I'm a Taurus, Virgo rising, Libra moon. And my Aries is, my Venus is in Aries. So there we have it. There's the story, right? Okay, fifth house. The transit of Saturn through the fifth house is ideally at the end of this. You leave this transit feeling a lot more self-confident. You have a much greater sense of purpose. You have a much greater sense of who you are. Your creative talents have been kind of uprooted, right? Well, it's all about Capricorn. So wherever the Capricorn energy is at, that's what we're talking about right now. Now, the aspects it makes will be different in your own personal charts. So when we're looking at the Saturn business in this fifth house, the question is going to be, what makes you unique? Right? How do you handle pride? How do you handle your ego? Where are your creative talents? How do you play hard? Even what sports do you enjoy? My favorite question of the fifth house ever is, what brings you joy? What brings you joy? Right? Like, what makes you happy? Where is joy in your life? Where is your level of play in your life? And if you're like, oh, well, I like a couple things. I don't care about what you like. What do you love? What brings you joy? Are you watching cats with cucumbers on YouTube and you're just laughing so hard you can't breathe? Do gifts make you happy? Does giving gifts make you happy? Right? What's your level of joy? Because from accessing joy will be the only way for you to restructure a whole life around it. If not, you're going to keep structuring out of obligation. Now, one of the other things that I think, that you will face in terms of the transit through this house is the reevaluation of your talents. And it's usually this thing that you wanted to do when you were 20, right? Like this thing that you wanted to do when you were 20, and it comes back to the surface and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been an accountant my whole life. I cannot possibly be a music teacher. Well, maybe you can. So it is going to be a time to really explore that. And if you don't know what brings you joy, it's going to be a time to explore that as well. Now, the fifth house is also associated with children. So it is a great time now if you want to have children, if you want to be around children, if you're trying to get pregnant, do an adoption, something like that, to let Saturn guide you here, because it's going to show you it may create some delays, but it'll be the ones that are trying to set everything in perfect order for you. The other thing about Saturn in Capricorn with children is that it could be a time where you're restructuring your relationship with children, right? It could also be a time where you're helping your children restructure something in their world. It can be an expensive time for children because something that they want to do, something they need, maybe you find out your child needs a tutor and you're like, oh my God, where is this money going to come from? Or you just find out they need a tutor and you're financially set to take care of that. It can be an expensive time for children, something around children, even something around your own inner child. Is it time for therapy? You need to have that conversation? Fine, do it, okay? The universe will step in and help you figure it out. Now, we can't forget that this is the house of beginnings, right? We begin romance, we begin true love here as well. So there is a reevaluation as well of what do you want in your life? How willing are you to play? To have something fun and to have something wonderful and have a new romance in your life, right? It's also not just romance, but the attention that you get from others. How willing are you to be in the spotlight, right? Because when somebody's trying to fall in love with you, you need to be willing to be seen, right? We can't date you from the couch, right? If you want to have this new experience, bring some joy, bring some play into your world so that people can find you. Some of the other issues I think that you face during this time include how deserving you are actually of that attention, how deserving you believe you are of having romance in your life, recognition in your life. This is going to be a time to take pride in yourself and love yourself. And I hate when people say, just love yourself, because that's just, it's so blanket. But it'll really be a time where I'm like, if you watch yourself play, you will see why you love you, because you're freaking fun. So, okay. Now, here's the last thing I'll tell you as we get ready to end this one. Who are you really? That's what you're going to leave this at, right? Like, have you been walking around out there and you're trying to be the tough person, or trying to be the soft person, or just not really being in the limelight because you forgot how badass you are? This will be a time where at the end of this house transit, you get to step out into it. Really, really beautiful, okay? All right. Let's see, what do we got going on over here? Okay, no stirring up the comments, you guys. Play nice, all right? Yep, my Virgo-ness really, and my chart is ruled by Mercury. My Gemini, my Mercury is in Gemini. Speaking is a thing. Like, I communicate. Okay, let's get to this sixth house here. When we've got Saturn transiting the sixth house, we're going to do things with work, co-workers, work skills, health, daily routine, small animals, right? Things like that are all going to happen in here. So, but what it's all going to be about is some different level of accountability, okay? Let's see. There we go. I just want to make sure I was answering all your questions. Okay, so during the transit of the sixth house, you might find yourself more accountable actually than ever, because there's integrity that comes to the table when we've got Saturn into play. And the sixth house is already about quality, right? When it comes to your work, you may be more accountable. You may find that people are like really demanding a different level of quality or integrity around the work that you're doing. You may feel really bogged down when Saturn's here, like there's almost too much work. I will tell you, if in your job, career, in your field, whatever it is that you do, your industry, if you do not have the necessary skills to advance, you'll start to feel the pressure of that. And it'll put you in unfortunately, humans like to work with pain. So when we get in enough pain or uncomfortable, then we take another action. So you may be put in a position to need to go learn a different job skill, right? The other thing I think that really becomes apparent to you is that you may feel like there's pressure in your daily routine, right? Where you're like, something is not working. I can't figure out why this isn't working. And what I tend to tell people is, first of all, look at how much of you is in your daily routine. The sixth house is also a service house, right? Like, service to each other is the rent we pay for being alive, right? Because it ain't free. Rent is due every day. So how much of you is in your life? Are you thinking about you, or is it constantly about you? Or is there space in there where you're actually thinking and giving to other people without needing to receive anything in return? Where's your service life in your sixth house, okay? And the thing about Saturn here in the sixth house is that the pressure that you feel is never undue. You certainly earned it, right? And it'll help you see that there's a little reality check due. Your rent check may be due, okay? All right, so now the other Saturn pressure that I think we have here is how to manage your diet, how to manage your body, how to manage your health, how to manage getting that fitness in on a day-to-day level. You may face events in your health that put you in a position to have to answer those questions, right? The sixth house is so closely connected to the third house. You may be having a lot of questions about how to handle the day-to-day conversation that's happening up here in your head. What's your mental health looking like again, right? Things like that. This could also be just the place where whole and whole on your health, in your work, even with your coworkers. Saturn is going to say, hey, you got to get your act together. Right? Like, I need you to level up, though. Generally, what I think, though, is in any form in the sixth house, if health concerns do manifest, they're ones that tend to be manageable. Like, you tend to have a choice on how to handle those things. They signal the need for change in diet routine or whatever it is. But by the end of the transit, I think you have a better handle on it. If it's that you needed to lose 40 pounds, gain 40 pounds, you're trying to make gains, right? Wonderful. It'll show you how to do that. So this is a wonderful transit, actually, I think, where you learn to be more productive, more service-oriented, and more honest about how you're moving through the day-to-day spaces of your life, to include your workforce as well. So if you are, here's the thing, I can't answer that blatantly for you today because we're going to cover the houses, but if you're in Aries, we'll be talking about Cancer horoscopes through the signs tomorrow at the exact same time if you wish to join. All right, let's talk about the 7th house, which means relationships. When transiting Saturn is going through the 7th house, it is legit, like absolutely legit. One of the things that I love about seeing a transiting Saturn in the 7th house, especially if you've already been in a relationship, is that this can sometimes can indicate a marriage, a commitment, right? Like, we're going to do this. We're going to commit in some way. We're going to move in together. We're going to do whatever it is that we're going to do. But what you're definitely going to do for sure is learn about relationships. You're going to learn about you through relationships. That's for sure. When Saturn was going through my 7th house, y'all, it got really real, really fast. And I saw the ways that I showed up in relationships that actually kept really good relationships from me of all varieties. Friendships, romance, work ones, business ones, all of these things. So legit, it's going to be a really good time. All right, now here I want to just pause for just 2 seconds, and I do have an offer that's up under the video. You'll see it when it's uploaded, but it's also at the top of the chat as well. And I'm going to have it out for the entire week with an opportunity for you to snag it, but it's the Saturn situation, right? Because Saturn's going to be transiting for about 3 years this time, and you really want to have a handle on the 3 years on your own personal chart. So it is a video that I will do for you. I will cover the aspects, the houses, everything, suggestions, and your takeaways for the next 3 years. So it'll be a good 15-20 minute video. The link to buy that is up in the description box, or up in the chat and in the description box as well. You can also find it at stormygrace.com. When the week is over, I'm just going to take that down and that'll be over. So, okay, there's that. The offer is out. All right, let's finish talking about this 7th house. So this is also going to be a time with Saturn here where it's time to spring clean. Which relationships do you have in your life that are not serving you and you are not serving them anymore? Which relationships have died out? Saturn will show you, because sometimes we don't know. Or what happens in the 7th house, because this is a place, thank you, Eva. This is a place in the 7th house where we consciously choose to have relationships. And if you've got Capricorn in your 7th house, you have chosen like an earth sign. And when we as earth signs choose, we hold on, right? Like, this is it. We're going to hold on. Even though this is an air house, we're going to hold on. So Saturn's going to show you where maybe you have an attachment that's unhealthy and just will not work, and you've got to let it go, right? And so it's almost, I tell you, if you've got this going in your 7th house, keep your hands open as you can, right? Like, lessons are lessons, but keep them as open as you can, because Saturn's going to pull those relationships out and say, you got to stop surrounding yourself with this. Or even further, it'll have to say, you have to stop doing this in your pattern of relationships, or you're going to continue to get hurt. And as a matter of fact, what I have seen with this in the 7th house is that if you will not stop a behavior pattern, usually Saturn has you get very hurt in a situation, because unfortunately humans sometimes have to learn through pain. But in the end, it's always Saturn who wraps you up in his arms and says, all right, let's restructure, right? You always have forgiveness and a safe place to land no matter what is going on. If you're single and you've got Saturn here in the 7th house, it's a time that you're going to have to define. You're going to have to define, understand, and crystallize your significant relationships and what you want around them, right? If you're single, why are you single, right? Like, really, what's the answer to why you're single? Well, you get to find out here. Do you have a thing you're doing energetically? Are you putting out something? Is it just not your time yet? Because that can be seen in an astrology chart, right? If you're not supposed to be looking towards getting married until you're 40 and you're 21, you know what I mean? We need to look at that. We need to have some understanding around that. But the question will be, what's happening for you here to create the appropriate structure to really energetically bring that into your world? If you already have a partner, though, I will tell you, any issues surrounding compromise, any of that kind of stuff, flexibility, really giving your heart to your partner, if you've been having any of those issues, they'll surface for the opportunity to restructure, fix them, and do something about them, right? Initial frustration when Saturn gets into your 7th house is normal. It feels like it's all falling apart, feels like you are angry, it feels like all of this kind of stuff. But then Saturn helps you see how to reuse that. Right? It says, all right, here's how we need to restructure this, because it's always about restructuring for your greatest good. And that greatest good is in alignment with the truth and with that conscious energy that is always in perfect alignment, right? Or seeking it. Now, single people, let me tell you, really truly, when Saturn is coming through this house, if you have a feeling of loneliness that rises through the surface, instead of recommitting to some weirdo or to like just being like, I'm going to commit to being single and eaten by dogs, what happens here is that you get the opportunity to go out and experience different kinds of commitment. If you don't have a romantic partner in your life, you can go out and experience some friendship. And it's amazing when we get new places and we meet new faces, what kind of relationships come, right? But it's going to be an issue for all of us of recommitting. And the recommitment is usually here, and then it's with the conscious chosen people that we choose. If you are involved in a casual situation when Saturn's transiting the 7th house, I think a pressure will come up where you're like, we got to commit, you got to poop or get off the pot. Right? Like we're either getting in or we're getting out, right? At least that was my experience and the experience of others I've talked to for sure. A healthy partnership at the end, though, is the goal and the outcome of this transit through the 7th house. Now, the most healthy relationship that you get the opportunity to divine and commit to is the one of you with you. What's right for you? Who are you, right? You've already had some work in the previous years on this 5th, 6th house before we got to 7. So you should know yourself a little bit better, know some things you want a little bit better, so you can bring those to the table and say, oh, I need to redefine my partnership ideal here, and put it on paper if you need to. Put it on paper so you and the universe know that you see exactly what you want so that you can point your boat towards it. You know what I mean? If you're trying to get to California, there is no point in driving to New York. You know what I'm saying? Like, point the boat where you are trying to go. All right. Now, with here in the 7th house, depending on the person's age and, of course, life circumstances, stuff like that, this can also be a significant mentorship, a significant relationship, of course, but a significant business partnership. Okay, so this is absolutely great. Now, I'll tell you, one of the other things that I've seen happen just this year is that as Saturn transited one of my clients' 7th houses, is when she was younger. We could trace back that she had begun a friendship with somebody that she thought would just be a casual friendship and last just a little bit, nothing really big, and it has ended up being one of the deepest friendships of her life, and it came under investigation just this last year while Saturn was in Sag, and you know what they came to find out? They needed to get through some things, but they're closer than ever. Okay, so really, I think at the end of this, you replace quality with quantity of friends and relationships in your life, because you really just need the good ones to help you move forward. All right, Saturn transiting this 8th house. How do you handle power? How do you handle sex? How do you handle intimacy? You know, are you able to really tell the truth here, right? Your honesty comes into play when we get into this 8th house. What kind of obsessions and addictions do you have? Deep-rooted compulsions, right? I've had a client figure out when Saturn came to the 8th house that the issue wasn't that they were crazy, that they had OCD, right? Things like that. What's happening here? As well, what I love in the 8th house is, one, what kind of unhealthy attachments do you have? Because there's a belief underneath that, right? And that's why you're still attached to whatever that thing is. The other one, though, is that this is the deepest portion of us. So what are your talents that you have to give to the world? These are the scariest questions about your talents, because they're the things that you really do well, that it's almost like, why would you be afraid to give that away? But we usually are. Things with psychology, metaphysics, astrology, occult, all of those things also come from here. So when Saturn's transiting your 8th house, you feel this pressure to answer all of these questions, right? To get down to the dirty of it. Often at the beginning of this transit, you're very sensitive to the outer world. It's almost as if the outer world seems like the volume is maybe turned up too loud, or you feel like there's outer pressures or forces that are putting you in a position where you have to examine these things. And what I mean by that is, you know, let's say you're in a relationship and this is an intimacy house. You're going to start developing intimacy, and your partner asks you, you know, are you going to deal with your blah, blah, blah issue? Because it will affect us. Boom, you are immediately from an outside source put in a position, right? This is a debt house. Maybe you've got people calling saying, hey, you know, where's that payment plan? Or, hey, are you going to make a payment plan, right? Or even if it's student loan debt and it's not time to pay that back yet, you may be starting to think, how am I going to do this, right? How am I going to do this joint resource here? Your sexuality is going to be in shift while this is happening, right? Because you're discovering some different things about yourself. You may be discovering some different things about your partner. Maybe your partner is like, I need a little bit of this, and you guys are having to figure that out, because it's definitely a joint resource place, from intimacy to finance to psychology. One way or another, you're going to walk with another person and or entity, likely both, to some kind of healing on the other side. Okay, now, yes, definitely, Saturn transiting the 8th house can bring sexual dysfunctions to the surface, whether they're just something within yourself, within your partner, some way your intimate life is not satisfactory to you, it's not satisfying, it's not exciting. You may feel this pressure to have to perform during this transit, as opposed to accepting that maybe we don't need to push to perform, we need to attack it from a different angle and try something different, right? The pressures are designed during every single house in this transit to push us to change. Okay, that's what it's about. Dissatisfaction, frustrations, getting in the way of what you want, not really speaking up for what you want or really doing what you want, especially in your career. If you're doing a career you don't love and there's something else you really want to be speaking to, especially if it's metaphysical, you'll continue during this transit to be put in a position where you have to speak up about it. During this transit, you may find that previous methods of controlling your environment, controlling something that you're doing or the people in your life or whatever, they're not effective anymore, right? People don't want to be controlled. Your addictions cannot be controlled. That's what makes it an addiction, right? It can only be treated, things like that. You may find that all of these elements of things you thought you had under control are not working out anymore. I think you just have to be aware during this transit how you employ power, because sometimes when we feel power or control slipping from us, we want to grab out, and it can make us more intense, and that's not useful. We can become afraid. We're afraid that if we don't have control, if we don't do this little thing, if we don't do this little ritual, if we don't text this person even though it's not working out, that it's just, we're going to fall apart. And those things are not, that's not it. I will tell you too, though, in terms of this house, pay attention to if you do have an addiction to something or a compulsion around something, right? Because we feel like, oh, I don't drink, I don't drug, I don't do these things, of course I don't have an addiction. If you have to do it every day and you have to question whether or not you should stop doing it, that's usually a sign that this is some kind of compulsion working. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. Now, any attempts you make during this transit to avoid paying debts is not going to be good for you, right? Like, you want to get on board with that, because by the end of this transit, the whole thing, from relationships to money to your creative talents to sex, you want to feel more emotionally healthy because you're telling your deep down truth, right? One piece of you has to die off so that a new version of you can live by the end of this transit. And that includes giving up things that you think you have control over that actually have control over you, okay? Just transiting Saturn in the 9th house. We're going to go a little over an hour, guys, because we've still got another 3 houses to get through after this, but I'm going to roll for you, okay? So transiting Saturn through the 9th house, as it makes its way, you are usually dedicated to some really nice self-improvement. You're developing these new ideas. You're developing this idea of you in the grand scheme of things, right? You're developing a philosophy, a faith, a different attitude around commitments and things like that. Ideas and spiritual goals that maybe you've taken for granted. Some people will come back to religion. Some people will come back to faith. Some people will come back to a meditation practice. Some people will go back to school educationally, right? Any of those kinds of things are things you could be coming back to. Because before, maybe it seemed like a really superficial idea. I don't know what I would go to school for. Why would I go to school when I can just go to work? I don't know why I would go to that church service. I don't know why I would pray. I don't know why I would whatever. Those things that seemed very superficial to you before now have a new level of depth, and you're able to go back and approach them with a different attitude, with a different readiness to have a philosophy and experience behind them. This is also a time where you may find yourself studying, a period of questioning exactly what you want to study, what you're working on, what you're working towards. Does this line of study match the life that you want and that you're trying to have? Yes, good sex can come back from the 8th house. It can. It's all about that. It's all about bringing it up. But in the 9th house, you also get to see that maybe some of us are going to begin new areas of study, or some people are going to be ready to leave leave old areas of study. This can be, especially as it closes in on the MC or that 10th house, people could be getting ready to graduate and things like that, right? That could definitely be something that's happening. But I think the other thing that this brings you in, because the 9th house to me is our biggest faith house, right? Because whatever you're going to do, you're going to have to take a really big risk. And you kind of have to jump off of a cliff and hope that something's going to teach you to fly, or that there's ground, or that your butt is now made of something bouncy, right? But whatever it is, you're going to take some risks. And so self-defeating attitudes that you have, self-defeating behaviors that you have are going to run to the surface. And it has a lot to do, all of this has a lot to do with your outlook on life. Are you being optimistic even if it looks like you're in a room full of turd? Can you find this beautiful pony in it? You know what I mean? What is your attitude around things? The blind faith is what builds you up here. The blind faith, the optimism, the things that you've carried with you that have been serving you well, they get amplified, and you also get to see where actually that attitude of positivity took you forward. Now, here's the other thing you get to do, your life philosophies, right? Up in the 9th house, we never want to be wrong. We really never want to be wrong. So you get to ask these questions of, is your belief system sound? Is it serving you? The spirit that drives and motivates you to move out into the world, what motivates you? That's going to come into play at this time. If you've been having shaky feelings about yourself and you feel like you need some self-improvement, that's all going to be something that comes up. And at first, when Saturn moves into this house, you may have the shakiest feelings. You may really feel unsure of yourself, and I promise you, it is normal. Okay, it is normal. As you move through this transit and you become more and more aware of what you're doing and knowing where you're heading and feeling like you've been rebuilt, especially spiritually, you have a more mature, optimistic attitude about things. You have less of a need to do and use some of these mechanisms that used to hold you back, right? Instead, you recognize exactly where you're trying to go, how you're starting to stand in your own weight, and you develop some new faith and some new behaviors as to how to move forward. And I really feel like you leave this transit with some hope. And hope means hearing other people's experience. So during this transit, you're going to have new people, new teachers come into your life. You yourself may be a teacher, and you're sharing hope, optimism, or information with someone else. Now, during this transit, if you are trying to publish a book, do any of those things, Saturn's going to help give you some structure, right? You want to put a new book out during this transit, you'll likely have it be very successful. Where Saturn's at, he's bringing grounding, right? You want to start something new in solid energy. So this could be a time where you actually have something really solid going on with broadcasting something out as well. All right, now as we tip up here and we get to the midheaven, thank you so much for the compliments, you guys. As we get to the top of the chart and we have this transit happening through this 10th house, ironically enough, there's a lot of freedom in knowing your limitations and in discipline. There is, right? And so when you have Saturn's transit through the 10th house, it teaches you exactly what that means, right? By this time that Saturn leaves your 10th house at the end, the overall goal at the end here, okay, so what you're going to learn is you're going to learn how limitations and discipline actually help you achieve, right? Like there's freedom in discipline. Discipline was never meant to keep you down. It's meant to set you free. Boom. I got you guys. All right. So when Saturn is here, the self-evaluation that comes from having Saturn here about how to actually get to this freedom gives you the place to say, where do you want to go, right? Because approximately 14 years before this transit, You've been learning some Saturn lessons of the 4th house, right? You built a secure foundation within yourself. Now here we are, we've come from the IC up to the MC, and the IC has to be fed so that the MC can live, okay? And I'll maybe have to do a separate video on that, but this is critical information. So 14 years before, we've done some changing in this 4th house zone. Now we're up here in the 10th, especially if this is not your first Saturn return, right? Or your first time really working with Saturn. But what has happened here is that now you have the space, you have some know-it-all, you have some understanding of your own uniqueness to build a life, to build an actual life on this foundation and go out and achieve it, right? This is career awards. This is career changes. You know, the 10th house is not just about the job you're going to do in the world. It's not just about your reputation and those things, but it's about at that soul level, what do you have to give the world? What is your gift to the world, right? Not service. I mean, we suit up and show up in a means of service, but what gift do you have to give to the world? And you can be paid by it, right? Are you an undercover astrologer, right? Is that a thing? Is that something that's going on? Are you an undercover investigator? Did you want to open a drug testing center? Did you want to open a technological school? Do you want to help adults whose psychic gifts have just woken up? What do you want to do? What do you have to give? You have the foundation. You know a little bit more about who you are. Now appears where you have to start to take action to allow those ambitions to unfold. In your career, in your reputation out in the world. That includes on Facebook, right? Any place that you have been, where you have created a reputation for yourself, where you have made poor choices, this house is going to light them up because you've got to pay the consequences. We've got to come back in balance. And that is not scary. Remember, it's always about the truth will set you free, right? Now, here's the same thing on this. If you've been making some choices, you've been putting in that work, you've been ground down, you've been disciplined, you can watch this transit bring you something beautiful. Just really something beautiful, especially if it's something that you felt like it hasn't been accomplished as of yet. It hasn't come to date and fruition as of yet. This is a transit that can help you do that. It'll also help you realign what exactly your personal goals are, okay? Saturn's transit through the 10th house, I tell you, more so than I think any of them, for me, in my experience, holds different meaning for different people, depending very much on how true you've been to yourself, right? However, as Saturn moves through this 10th house, the thing that happens is we begin to feel more secure because we're in the space of the truth. We recognize what we've accomplished, we recognize what we've done, and it's like it all kind of becomes water under the bridge, and we're in a more secure, honest place to move forward, right? So it's a really, really good transit. All right, now we've spent, by the time we get to the 11th house, right, when we're looking at this transit, you spent, by the time we get to the 11th house, we spent a couple years focusing much of your energy on your place in society, your responsibilities, your social obligations, who you are, and you're standing your reputation while Saturn was in that 10th house. So now at this point, the idea of the evolution is that you should be at a point now where you know realistically something that you're doing out in the world, you may not know how to do it, and that's why this gets to get bigger for you here. Saturn transiting the 11th house, events, realizations, friends, technology, cause you to ask yourself where you're going and how you're getting there. Who's supporting you? Over the next 2 years, for sure, 3 really, it's going to be people for you who have this in the 11th house. It's going to be people who help make your dreams come true. So you've got to get you and your message that came from this side, from the, from the northern to the southern hemispheres. You've got to get those ideas out, but how are you going to do that? So your personal goals, your long-range goals, now that you know some of these things come under investigation here with Saturn scrutiny, because Saturn gets out that magnifying glass on them, I promise you. How you fit with other people, how you cooperate, how you work with groups. Have you been supposed to be, well, that didn't make sense at all. Were you supposed to be working with groups and you've still been working on your own? Is it time for you to get out there, right? The other thing that may happen here is that you're changing. You're changing. During this Saturn transit, you got to get a new tribe. You got to get the tribe that supports you and your uniqueness in what you're doing, right? You got to do it, because during this transit, you can feel alienated. You can feel alienated from society, from people, from places, from your old groups and things like that. You have that feeling that's deep, it's internal, and it's like, I just don't fit here. Or you literally feel like an alien. For some of you, you will start studying things on aliens, or you'll have more questions about things with aliens. Very paranormal. I love that about this house. You could just have that feeling of loneliness. And what that is an indicator of, it's time for you to get the people that support you. You have to stop being selfish. If your family doesn't understand astrology, they don't understand why you do it, stop telling them about it, right? Because then you take them hostage. The idea is not to take hostages, it's to enjoy conversation. So you got to go to the people that talk about astrology. If it's technology, if it's relationships, if it's social justice, find your tribe, right? Now, the other thing I think that may happen is if you've got casual friendships, not acquaintances, but casual actual friendships, you may decide that you don't care for those in your world anymore because you're ready to go to another level. So you may be like, you know what, Bonnie, I just can't do this anymore. Like this is just not the thing. And it doesn't mean that anything's wrong or anyone's bad. It just means that it's time for your friendship zone to get different, right? One of the other things I think here too is that somebody may be trying to establish a serious friendship with you, and they are trying to bring you into a group in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think it's anything you need to be afraid of. I think you just need to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why would I be going to this group? You know, because there's the friend who wants to drag you along to Zumba or to, you know, a science fair or something like that. And it's like, okay, I don't really want to do that, but you go along and then you end up enjoying it, as opposed to a person who's like, I would like to invite you into maybe something BDSM, and you know that you're not into that. Doesn't make it right, wrong, or indifferent, but you know you're not interested in that, right? So just be mindful of asking yourself, why are you doing what you're doing? Because ultimately, what you're doing here in this 11th house is you're figuring out your plan, and you need to be asking, if I go to this event, if I interact with this person, can I add something here? Not what am I going to get out of it? Can I add something here? And this includes in your role in the world, right? In this group, can I add something? In the world, can I add something to it? As Saturn moves further through this house for you, by the time the transit's over, I think you will have found more ways to bring definition and articulation to your dreams, to your hopes, to the people you want to travel with, and also to your message. So some of you will really be doing a crap ton of learning to use your technology. You really will. So, you know, just get on board for that. If you've got this beautiful business, or if you've been afraid of technology, just, you know, load up your socks now and get comfortable, because it's going to be time to definitely learn how to get your message out there for sure. All right, house number 12. Contemplation, meaning of our existence, things behind the scenes, your failures, your addictions, your fears, closure, all things sub and unconscious are happening here in the 12th house. So those are going to be the focus of what you're going to get some order around, which seems funny because it's our most like disorderly house, right? It's like water. It's a water house, right? So when Saturn is moving here, this transit and this cycle of this transit here, you will have in the beginning, for sure, a fair amount of confusion and discontent, truly, where you're like, I can't figure out what's off, or I don't understand this relationship. I don't understand why I'm doing this. I don't understand why people are doing this. I don't understand why we treat people this way. Things like that. There could just be a lot of confusion, right? And it's showing you where you have space to grow into some stronger, more sturdy spiritual fitness, and that's okay. So as Saturn continues to bring the magnifying glass in this area of your life, it's going to show you what's beneath the surface, right? And you're seriously put in a position where you have to do some cleaning, because here's the deal about Saturn in the 12th house, the blame game, right? If your life is someone else's fault, you are fucked, because you can't change that person, right? The only person you can change is you. And here's the other thing to remember with Saturn in the 12th house. Our problems come from us, not at us. So we each have a part to play in the dramas that we're experiencing. And sometimes the only part that we still have to play is that we continue to participate in keeping that ball rolling, right? And Saturn's going to come and say, no, we got to spiritually house clean right now. We've got to get this out of here. We've got to go where the fear is at so we can let it go, shine some light here so we can do some closure. Right? I need to bring structure here for you. I need to help you be spiritually fit and healthy, right? That's what Saturn's going to do here. So during this transit, you're going to face your demons. You really are. The vague, sometimes vague, haunting fears that we have, these things we don't want to talk about. And here's the deal with this entire next 5 years of life, for sure, you are not supposed to be traveling alone. You're supposed to be traveling with a travel buddy or a tribe. So if you don't have one and isolation is your thing, get out of isolation. Start to go ask some questions, right? Even if you just watch a YouTube tutorial on the thing you're afraid of, on letting go of whatever, you're not meant to travel alone, okay? All right, let's get back to the 12th house. So during the 12th house, you could also have these skeletons come out of your closet, right? For sure, right? Which will be equally intense for people who have been being very judgmental. If you've been being very judgmental to other people, it's like, oh, you left your door open and your skeletons just fell out. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to the people who know they've got change, they've got behavior patterns, addictions, fears that are damaging them or their relationships. And those people who are walking towards it willingly will be less afraid. They really will. I mean, or they'll be less surprised. They may be equally afraid. But during this transit, you go where the fear is at. So as Saturn kind of sweeps through that closet, it's getting all of those skeletons, it demands that you do take this really hard look at what you've been doing and how you've been showing up. The 12th house is always a place for dumping. We leave things over there that we didn't even know we left over there, right? So, or things that you've left undone, which includes projects. If you've got a project you've been working on and it's not done, you feel some level of guilt around that or shame or whatever, Saturn's going to show it to you so that you can get ready to be like, okay, I don't need to feel like this anymore. You know, the process, I think, through the 12th house can feel rather lengthy and slow, but if it's done properly, I feel like this is one of the most rewarding houses to get to work on for sure, because you're going to deal with endings here rather than a lot of new beginnings. You're going to deal with closure. You're going to deal with shedding these outdated attachments, unconsciously preparing yourself for Saturn to be in your first house where you get some new structure at putting yourself out there in the world. You know what I mean? All of these kinds of things. Now, I just want to touch on this just in a very quickly and very minorly, I think. You may want to isolate yourselves. I told you that. And the process may tend to come a little bit more naturally when Saturn's here, but you've got to peek your head out sometime. You really do, or it can be a transit that's too dark and too heavy. So try not to be on your own. And that includes hiding because of health issues, right? And they are the kind that are psychic, usually psychic or psychological. Right? And for some people, your psychic gifts in the last year, 2 years have really woken up so much that you're like, what the hey? And so you may really need some help around that. So whatever the psychic things are that are going on, you may need to receive some help, and they're going to come to the surface for you to deal with them. I think too, the last thing I want to say about this transit that I think is a beautiful outcome of it is that you may find yourself really attracted to alternate ways of healing or living. You may find yourself more attracted to psychic study, metaphysics, tarot. Definitely, I think some of you will meet your guides. They're not new guides, but they may be new to you meeting them. And having a steady spiritual teacher is a wonderful thing to gain at this time to help you walk in this new direction. It's just going to be, you know what I mean? Because just because you've got a gift, and it's not even a gift, just because you're tapped into that psychic sense doesn't mean you know what to do in that psychic terrain. So definitely if you need to get a new teacher, if you need to do some of the personal house cleaning, you guys know I have the personal house cleaning program. We spend 4 weeks and get you moving. We clean out, and you can read all of the reviews of the 25 now people who have been through my program. Amazing. But like I said, if you don't do it with me, do it with someone. It is worth it. This house cleaning is critical to you so that you can come to the other side. And not only that, so that during this transit, you don't feel like, oh my God, this is too much, because it can be overwhelming. So, all right, guys, we have covered all 12 houses, and what I can tell you about the key to handling Saturn is that it teaches you limitations, moderation, responsibility, getting things solid. So the best way to handle this is to avoid fighting it. Don't fight what's being presented to you, and do not travel alone. Even if that means you got to get new helpers to help you out, okay? And your new helpers in your life will likely not make it. Your new teachers, anyways. You can get some helpers and they'll help you stay calm and know that, we don't need to stop the planet so you can get off. But your teachers, your new teachers during this transit will push you, and it will sometimes be uncomfortable, and uncomfortable is okay. All right, you guys, I love you so much. Thank you guys for being here. I'm going to post the Saturn situation videos one more time so that everybody has the link, especially since, we are now at the end of this. And I do invite you to join me tomorrow, where I'm going to do a general horoscope for Saturn and Capricorn through the signs. Okay, so join me there. Definitely get hooked up on your Saturn situation video, which will cover all 3 years. And we're going to look at your transits. They'll be broken down by your personal chart. So if you've been in the room and you're asking me about different connections, conjunctions, things like that, this will be your opportunity to get them answered, especially in video form that you can keep for the next 3 years. Come back and reference and things like that, okay? You guys, I love you so much. I will have the November scopes going up here just shortly as well. I've got some other videos, so just look forward to them, and I look forward to seeing you guys, of course, in the live chats for the rest of the week, because there'll be live chats for the rest of the week, and of course in the comment sections below the videos and our individual one-on-one appointments. I love you guys more than life. Bye, everyone.